Do you own your tech? While this might seem like a silly question at first, we're exploring the right to repair with our poster. So, right to repair is a movement basically focusing on the idea that if you buy something, you should be able to use that product exactly how you want to, including you should be able to repair it, mod it, and just basically when you purchase something, you should own your device. Right now, we're claiming you don't do that. The biggest example of this are two companies that we could find are Apple and John Deere. Let me start with John Deere. John Deere, if you don't know, is like a tractor and farm supplies making company for farmers. And these farmers traditionally have repaired and they tend to do things on their own. And so when John Deere started putting software limitations and software blockades that they would have to go to John Deere manufacturers or have John Deere certified technicians come out and fix their own tractors, it created a problem where just farmers were being exploited. And we question the ethicality of them buying a tractor and then being forced to repair it only through John Deere approved methods. We don't think that is fair to both the consumers of that, and we think it's unfair to the engineers who are forced to work on that and make things intentionally dense so that farmers can't repair these type of products. The second big example that we think is Apple, and I'm going to hand this off to Ranger so he can explain that.
Of course, yes. So Apple is a horrible company for this, mostly because they implement these blockades in both hardware and software. My phone is an example of this. I recently replaced the back glass with a clear back glass and the battery. If I had an iPhone, I wouldn't be able to do this because they pair the battery and back glass to the phone. And if you replace these, or a third-party company replaces these, it will report a software error, or sometimes not even report an error at all, which makes it seem like either you or the third-party repair company did this repair incorrectly, which is just an awful thing to do, because it reflects poorly on the repair company, or reflects poorly on the customer, and it makes it seem like you need to buy a new phone every time you repair it, or only go through Apple, which is awful for designers and everything, and that goes into these phones because they're forced to do this. So Apple also is guilty of slowing down phones over time as their battery degrades. They have a setting buried deep in their terms and conditions that goes over how they're going to slow down your phone and preserve the battery. But in reality, all this seems to do is make it seem like you need to buy a new phone again. So this is just creating unnecessary waste and awful stuff that customers have to deal with, and the customer just loses. I'm going to hand this off to Ben now.
So Ranger mentioned the idea of Apple intentionally slowing down their phones. This falls into a subcategory of right to repair known as planned obsolescence. Essentially, planned obsolescence is a company intentionally making a worse product so that you'll have to spend more money either getting it fixed or buying a new product. A really big culprit of planned obsolescence is Canon, the printer company. There's a lawsuit that happened a few years ago in which they would sell scanners and printers like a two-in-one device. And for starters, part of the parts pairing also applies to a lot of printer companies. HP, Epson, Canon, they're all guilty of it, where you need to buy their ink cartridges in order for the printer to actually work. We can understand that. There's a lot of technology that goes into the ink cartridges so that the printer knows how much ink is left, and we understand that these companies need to make a profit, so that is understandable. But the part that we think is unethical is whenever these Canon printers would run out of ink, the scanner functionality of the device would just stop working. And so even though you can and should still be able to use it as a scanner, Canon, through their planned obsolescence, has disabled that feature, which we think means that you're not actually owning this device. Canon is just letting you use it in the ways they want you to use it. Another subcategory of right to repair is called features on demand. It can be thought of more as subscriptions. So a really good example of this is BMW not too long ago would give you heated seats in your cars, and then after your 3-year free trial, they would charge you a monthly subscription to continue using those heated seats. And so, again, we understand that BMW needs to make a profit, but if a consumer is going in buying this BMW with the thought of, oh, they're providing me with the heated seats, and then all of a sudden you're paying a monthly subscription, we find that very deceptive. It's not keeping the customer in mind, and really makes you question, do you actually own your car? Or does BMW still own your car and you're just still leasing it out? You're just borrowing the features from it. And so we find this a main issue, especially violating a utilitarian moral framework in which the large customer is the majority group, the large group. These companies, they might be benefiting from charging these extra things, but the large scale is at a detriment because of all these extra charges or worse quality products. We also consider the rights-based moral framework in violation here as well, just because users are losing their right to do whatever they want with their technology and equipment. There's also a handful of ethical codes that are being violated with both NSPE and IEEE. A lot with sustainability, especially with all the e-waste that comes from people just buying a new iPhone instead of being able to replace their battery. NSPE code 32D mentions engineers are encouraged to adhere to the principles of sustainable development in order to protect the environment for future generations. All the e-waste being generated by the anti-right to repair people is in direct violation of this, as well as IEEE standard 1.1, which also mentions engineers should strive to comply with ethical design and sustainable development practices. We also consider the deceptive related codes in violation here. NSPE 2.5, engineers shall avoid deceptive acts. 3.2, engineers shall at all times strive to serve the public interest. We consider the lack of transparency on the parts of BMW, Canon, Apple, John Deere, all these companies as deceiving the customer so that the customer will then have to buy more of their products. And so an issue that we have primarily is the lack of transparency. If these companies would forthright say, hey, we are going to disable the scanning feature of this device if you run out of ink, great, tell us. We can get behind that, but make sure that we know so that once we buy the product, we know what we're going into. And we can choose not to buy the product if that's not something we want to buy into. And so I mentioned a lot about companies needing to make a profit. We understand that, and it poses the question, is it possible to keep the users in mind but still make a profit from your devices? And so there's a really good company out there called Framework that I'm going to let Noah talk about.
So, Framework. We think this is one of the few examples of ethical tech. That means that pretty much from the ground up, their entire mission is to make tech that's both sustainable but repairable and upgradable. This means that they have the consumer in the mind with pretty much every decision they make. Their computers are built just to last longer in that, like I said, every single part is repairable. You open this up with the screwdriver that comes with. Every single part has a QR code right on it, so you can scan it and it tells you exactly how to buy a new one, how to repair it, and how to install it. And all of it, they sell every single replacement part pretty much at cost, and they aren't trying to they're making money off of it, but they're not trying to screw over the consumer by making things intentionally dense. A great example of just their ability to save e-waste is if you want to upgrade the main board in your laptop, something that's traditionally unheard of. So let's say you want a new CPU, you'll buy a new main board, and then the old main board from your laptop, they sell a 3D printed file. You print it, and now you have a desktop computer. They sell some accessories, and now your old laptop is now just a little mini PC that someone else can use, therefore keeping the longevity of the product alive. It's something where it's really encouraging to see a company moving this direction without the force of legislation or pressure like that. They're very much thinking consumer first, and it's a great example of ethical tech. But it begs the question, is it profitable? Actually, 2 days ago, February 25th, 2025, the CEO of Framework, who is a past Apple and Oculus engineer, explained that they are actually profitable year over year, and that they believe that they are the fastest growing laptop brand, which is just super encouraging to see that yes, it's possible to make a profit and increase in revenue while having this mission of just being grounded in product longevity. We just find it fascinating that a company is able to do ethical tech. It means that all the tech companies not doing it, that are thousands of times bigger, really don't have much of an excuse for why they're not doing this. Finally, Ben is going to explain how this conflicts with our personal values.
So some of our values that we think are being kind of at, butting heads with this right to repair movement, or rather the lack of right to repair. And I mentioned it earlier, but is our transparency from the companies. At the end of the day, we just want the companies selling us products to be upfront with what they're selling us. We understand, again, you need to make a profit. We can get behind that. Just help us to make a more informed decision whenever we go to buy your product. Another value that we think is being violated is creativity and resourcefulness. Especially as engineers, a lot of what we do is tinker with our devices. You think about building a prototype, you're going to scrap different things from different parts to build this prototype. And with the issues of right to repair, you're not really able to do that when Apple is super gluing their batteries to their phones. If you're not able to take apart a product or a piece of tech, how are you going to be creative with it and upgrade the RAM in your laptop or swap out a battery that is broken? It discourages people from exploring this creative side, and honestly, I think discourages people from becoming engineers because they're not getting that hands-on experience. Another thing that we greatly value is the ability to own what you purchase. Obviously, you want to have some sort of authority over what you own. And with all of the issues with these large companies restricting your access, you're not really owning your tech. On the one hand, yes, you are buying your iPhone, you are buying your John Deere tractor, you are buying your BMW, but when BMW is charging you a monthly subscription to use your heated seats, I don't feel like I'm owning that car. When Apple's not letting me swap out the battery on my own, I don't feel like I'm owning that iPhone. And so that really butts heads with our values there. We also value environmental awareness. We mentioned e-waste. We think that a lot of these companies are just being negligent of our environment, which is already being so strained with pollution and e-waste and trash in the oceans, that we think that companies need to be shaping their framework around how to still continue what we're doing, but in the long run preserve the environment. Our last value that we consider being violated is care for the customer. We want our companies and our customers to be working together. We don't think that we're anti two ends of the spectrum. At the end of the day, we're trying to do life together. You would not be a company if you did not have customers, and we as customers would not have the products that we want if it weren't for the companies. And so we really think that these companies, Apple, John Deere, Canon, should be working with the customer and really saying what is in the best interest for our customer while we are still able to make a profit. And so we see a lot of issues being violated with our values, with moral frameworks, with ethical codes, with a lot of these right to repair culprits, and we're very optimistic about what Framework has to offer in positive ways of showing that right to repair can actually exist. So we pose the question, do you own your own tech?